Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's figure out what is the best starter in Pokemon Legends ZA. With the game being so close, a lot of people are going to be wondering what is the best Pokemon starter to choose in the game. And of course, the three starters we have are Chikorita, Totodile, and Tepig. But this time around, it's a little bit confusing which one should be the best option to go for. And this is because all three of these guys are going to get Mega Evolutions, as has been confirmed by a bunch of leaks. And also, those Megas may or may not have extra typings, which means that the choice you go for could drastically change your experience. So we're going to go through the information we know, the information we don't know, and break down which one of these fellas is the best choice option to go for. So let's get started. Now, the first thing is going to be Meganium. Now, Meganium is going to get a Mega version, and it is rumored that the Mega is going to be a Grass Fairy type. Now, that's pretty interesting, but what is this Pokemon going to be like in gameplay? Well, again, it's a lot of speculation here, so please bear with me, but most likely, it's going to remain a very tanky Pokemon. Very, like, tanky with very limited speed, and speed is going to be important in this game. Not to say that having a tanky Pokemon isn't going to be good. However, if you don't know, the speed stat in Legends ZA specifically is tied to the cooldowns. So the lower your speed, the longer your cooldowns will be. However, that also means that if you are a tankier Pokemon, you'll be able to take more hits, which is logical. However, for Meganium, here's what we have to say. You see, starting off as a Chikorita, it will be maybe somewhat useful at the beginning of the game because there will be a few rock types as well as water Pokemon around the game which you can easily take down. We don't know what the gym leaders and stuff will be, if there even are any gym leaders, but we do know that against things like, you know, the rogue Megas and things of that nature, and based on the entire Pokédex, it seems like it's going to be up against a lot of different stuff. But because of the fact that it has moves like Synthesis, Leech Seed, Reflect, Light Screen, these are pure support tools, right? You use this Pokemon as support, it is good as a backup Pokemon, but is it going to be your main choice? Is it the thing you want to go for? Another strength is that Fairy typing. In its Mega form, this will help it really good against any Dragon types, any Dark, and any Fighting types. Basically, it's going to be perfect against things like that, but the question of course becomes, how many of those Pokemon will it encounter? However, it also has weaknesses such as Poison, Steel, Fire, Ice, and Flying, and that's basically half the current Pokédex for this game. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of weaknesses that it will have, which makes it a little bit rough. But it doesn't even end there. It also has an overlap directly where it competes with other Pokemon that are Fairy types, which might do a better job. Like, you could go for Mega Gardevoir. You could even get Mega Diancie eventually, right? Or, if you really like evolutions, Sylveon is probably the better option to go for here because these will outshine it in terms of the Fairy typing. As for the Grass typing, again, the game probably has a lot of options as well in this regard. Like, overall, it's a great wall for defensive players. If you want to play the game defensively, you just want to have a really bulky Pokemon, then Meganium actually will be a good choice. Chikorita will be a good option. Like, the early game, Chikorita may struggle a little bit because we've seen that there are going to be, like, Houndours and Houndooms running around in, like, the early zones, and we know for a fact there will be a lot of, like, things like Fire types as well as also any Flying type Pokemon. You're going to struggle with, like, the Chikorita as you go around and play the game. However, I got to play with Chikorita in the game, and early on, it felt good. Like, it just felt nice using it, like running around with it and stuff. However, I do feel like out of the three options, it is the one that's going to be the tankiest, and as such, it will have a massive use case in certain scenarios, but maybe later into the game. It might be a hard time and a rough time early on. And so we can move on to Feraligatr. Now, Feraligatr is going to have a Mega Evolution, and it is rumored, again, no confirmation, that it's going to be a Mega Water and Dragon type. Yes, against the Dragon typing, which means that it is 2 times weak against Meganium, which is kind of funny if you really think about it. But yeah, so most likely this is going to be the fastest and most flexible Pokemon amongst the mix here. With probably really strong attack, most likely, and it's going to be pretty bulky Pokemon, most likely. Again, from the move pool, at least the moves that it should have, again, all of these moves are not confirmed, but it most likely will have them, would be moves like Dragon Dance. It could have Crunch, Ice Fang, it could also have Brick Break, Earthquake, which is really important, Flip Turn Stun, and also Dragon Claw. So it has a lot of options for certain moves. Like, it even goes beyond that. It can also even have, like, Psychic Fang, Shadow Claw, Stomping Tantrum, Rock Slide. There's just so many things. Like, I think even Swords Dance would be another move. Liquidation, Waterfall, Surf, okay? Surf, and Outrage, which if it's a Dragon type, that Outrage is also now Stab, which means it would do even more damage. Now, we don't know how Stab moves and any of that will still work in the game, if that mechanic still exists in the game. I don't think anybody's really confirmed that, and we'll only know about that once the game has been fully data mined and they've confirmed how everything works. But for now, though, we just know that it's going to have an amazing move pool, right? Just based on what we know about the regular Feraligatr, it should have a good move pool for this game. So again, its strengths are, it's got an excellent setup. Like, it can be perfectly used to sweep potentially a bunch of stuff. If you can, like, use that Dragon Dance, you'll be able to just sweep through so much stuff. Now, keep in mind, again, the way that stat boosting moves work in this game is that they do not stack, right? So if you use Dragon Dance, that's not going to increase your stats exponentially to 1x, 2x, 3x, and so on and so forth. Instead, if you use Dragon Dance twice, it just extends the duration of Dragon Dance, meaning that the effects of it are always going to be the same. It will never give you, like, X amount more or whatever. It's always going to be the same. So generally speaking, that means that a lot of these stat boosting moves will not be as useful as they would have been in a regular Pokemon game, but they're still very, very, very strong. And also, Water Dragon gives it only like 3 weaknesses, that being Fairy, Dragon itself, and again, if you want to just deal with Freeze Dry. So yeah, if you got up against an Ice type. But other than that, you pretty much are pretty solid, right? Like, it does have a few overlaps in terms of Pokemon that it could be similar to, that being Garchomp, Salamence, and Dragonite. Of course, Dragonite having its Mega as well now. Even Goodra could be considered a better option if you really want to say it like that. But then again, I think most people are going to go for Totodile, specifically because Totodile, just overall as a Pokemon, is cute. It is probably the cutest of these three, at least to me personally, and I know that that's my choice of starter. However, it does seem like it may have like a decent chunk of struggle, especially early on in this game, because there will be a lot of grass types early on that you're going to struggle against in like the wild areas. As for like the people you encounter, that's a little bit different. Like the actual trainers in the ZA Royale, those we do not know like how strong those guys will be and how much trouble they will actually, cause. But generally speaking, the overall verdict for Feraligatr is that it's great early and mid game, but its kind of role gets sort of eaten alive by better dragon type Pokemon later on in the game. Especially if it does get that dragon typing in its Mega Evolution, then it's decent, it's really solid, but it may somewhat be like outpaced by better options. Because remember, you cannot, you could have all 3 starters in your team if you wanted to, but the argument we're trying to make here is which is the best one, right? Across the board, what is the best choice? Again, your choices will always be up to yourself, but I thought it would be fun to talk about. And next we have Mega Emboar, which is rumored to remain, well, firefighting. Man, do they love just reusing that combo. If it is a firefighting type, it pretty much ends up being in that same position as a lot of other firefighting type Pokemon. Now, the first thing is, it's probably going to be a powerhouse Pokemon with like decent HP, decent attack, and probably a decent chunk of special attack too, because again, it does have a lot of moves that would fit that. However, this move pool could be a combination of things like Trail Blaze, Flame Charge, Drain Punch, Earthquake, Poison Jab, Scald, Wild Charge, and Sucker Punch could all be in its moveset. Again, keep in mind, we don't know how moves like Sucker Punch are going to work. Like, are they still going to be priority? Does priority even matter? Because it's not turn-based, so do just moves like Sucker Punch just go really fast? Do they cause any other status effects? We don't know if they're even going to be present, but generally moves will be like direct moves. Any sort of physical attacks on this fella are going to be super strong if it gets that fighting typing. Again, can basically destroy essentially half the Pokédex of this game. Like, we've seen the entire Pokédex of this game, and based on that Pokédex, it looks like it's gonna be pretty much beating everyone, right? Like, roughly 124 out of the 230 Pokemon that we have in the Pokédex, it's strong against. Like, it has both physical and special options on it, and it can also buff its speed while attacking and keep staying bulky. Because remember, the speed only affects the cooldown of your moves. Because your moves are essentially dictated by the speed of your Pokemon, it means that any Pokemon that is slower but has heavy hitting moves is gonna essentially get those moves back slower. However, if you use a stat boosting move like, say, Dragon Dance or something, not on Emboar, but just on any Pokemon, boosting your speed, or I don't know, using agility or something like that, is going to boost your speed. That doesn't mean your Pokemon is going to move faster in the overworld, but rather the cooldown of your moves is going to be faster. So let's say if you use agility, and for the next 10 seconds, all of your moves get like a 50% speed up in cooldown reduction. So that means that, let's say if you got agility, and then let's say you have Drain Punch, or I don't know, Flame Charge. Let's say Flame Charge takes 7 seconds to, go down on the cooldown. Well, if you use agility to boost for 10 seconds, then guess what? You're going to be able to boost the chance chance of your, of your cooldown going down from 7 seconds to 3.5 seconds instead, which means that within that 10-second span, you could use 2.5 flame charges, whereas normally you might be able to only use 1.5, right? So the point is that it's going to definitely, like, really matter on how you play it and how you choose it. But if you have a Pokemon like Emboar and Mega Emboar especially, which is going to have a lot of most likely physical moves, given the fact that it would be a fighting type, that usually means that you want to make sure you do have some speed altering moves, like something that will increase its speed, because if you have that combined with the fact that this Pokemon literally has a moveset that is strong against half the Pokédex, like actually roughly more than half the Pokédex, it's kind of insane. Like, it is actually incredible. But again, it does have some weaknesses, and there are a few Pokemon that you could go for instead. Like, keep in mind, it is slowest, most likely, in those cooldowns, compared to something like Lucario, which does have that typing, the Steel Fighting, Blaziken as well with Fire Fighting, and Hawlucha as well now, because we do also have Mega Hawlucha. But again, those guys are probably going to be faster, so you might want to go for those. However, with Emboar, you could have something else with that, like, just pure damage, right? Again, the general verdict on this one is that it's absolutely cracked, okay? It's gonna be probably a super strong Pokemon, which is funny because it's like one of the least popular out of the three. I do think Chikorita gets the worst rep, but it basically would dominate early on because a lot of the trainers and stuff you're gonna go up against with Tepig are just gonna struggle against you purely because you do have that fire typing, and fire typing early on in most Pokemon games has an advantage because a lot of Pokemon will just be weak against it, especially if you run into Bellsprout. So really any like grass types, bug types, things like that are gonna struggle. If you run into a Spinarak, you can destroy it. If you run into a Bellsprout, you can destroy it, right? A lot of Pokemon struggle against it, whereas maybe with Chikorita, you'd have a little bit more trouble. So let's come to the conclusion then, and we're gonna put it like this. Out of the three, which one is the best all-arounder? The best all-arounder is probably Totodile, because it is still gonna be fast, and it's still gonna hit hard most likely. So in that regard, it'll probably be Totodile. However, the Pokemon that is effective probably throughout your entire journey, like if you're gonna do a playthrough, probably going to be Tepig, because it's going to be useful throughout the entire thing. I mean, yes, it's going to be a bit slower than, say, going for a Blaziken, but it's still going to be a very useful Pokemon. And by far, the least useful one for a playthrough is probably going to be Chikorita, because there's going to be too many Pokemon that counter it throughout the playthrough, at least based on the current Pokédex that we've seen of the game, consisting of like 300 Pokemon. That includes forms and megas and stuff. It does feel like it has the most weaknesses across the board, whereas on the other hand, we have Emboar that has the least amount, like it has the most things it's strong against, especially with Tepig and stuff, with the fire typing. There's so much stuff you can take down with that. So I would definitely say, as of right now, again, it'll probably go Tepig, Totodile, Chikorita. However, again, like I said, we don't actually know, because all these Pokemon could get special moves that will make them even stronger. And again, we do not know exactly what speed stats each Pokemon is going to have and how that's going to affect their different moves, because again, it's all about the cooldowns now, right? It's not about having enough PP or accuracy, any of that. It's all about which Pokemon has the lowest cooldown and which moves can you hit off the hardest and the fastest, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, again, guys, this is just my dumb opinion. It doesn't really, actually, it's not really my opinion. It's just an objective thing we've tried to look at with me and the help of my friend Toyoko, trying to figure out, like, hey, what is objectively the best starter? For a playthrough, I'm going to put it like this. We're going to have three categories here. So, for a playthrough, probably Tepig. Tepig is just going to be the strongest, especially to get you through the early game and stuff. It's probably going to have the best advantages. However, for an all-arounder experience, if you're looking for a Pokemon that's also going to be fun in a playthrough and a Pokemon that's going to be useful kind of late game, you can still have a use case for it. It's not going to be a Pokemon you just throw into your box. That probably would be Totodile. However, if you're looking for a Pokemon that's going to be really good defensively, if you're going to be playing the competitive mode in this game, then guess what? Chikorita is probably going to be the best option in that regard, if you want to put it that way. So technically, all three starters have a use case, but if you're looking for the overall best pick, just for a regular playthrough, it probably still is Tepig. And that's really weird to say, because I would have assumed it would have been Totodile, but just based on like the stuff we were able to figure out, this seems to be the case. Mostly because it's really strong against like 60% of the Pokédex, okay? Like, it's so strong against this game's Pokédex. It's actually kind of crazy, especially when it turns into an Emboar. It's super strong against a lot of stuff. So that's kind of what gives it a lot of advantages. But again, this could all change by the time the game comes out and we get to see all the Pokemon. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you from me and my friend Toyoko, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.